All right, folks, let's do the new moon in Scorpio video. Thank you to the person who commented. In my last video, was talking about which video I should do next, and it seemed like the right thing to do was the new moon in Scorpio video that's coming up in less than 48 hours now, and then the videos on Venus's transit in Libra and Mercury's transit through Sagittarius, and I actually had a little bit more to add even about Saturn and its effects can follow that. This way at least you have this information. It's not, it actually makes sense to get this done in perfect timing in a certain sense. I was going to do this video significantly earlier today, but the moon is, of course, pretty much combust at this point in time. The moon is in Scorpio now and is awfully close to the sun and is not really all that visible at all. And so, in typical, as I've mentioned to you in the few days before the new moon fashion, this afternoon, I ate lunch and I thought I would lie down, and the next thing I knew, it was like 5:30. So permit yourself to, and of course, when I woke up and I thought after this video, I was so amused by the fact that I was living out what I talk about. And as I've mentioned to you, the 48 odd hours before a new moon, feels a little bit like the moon is going through its own personal 12th house. Now, it's not really. It's just that it's combust. It's just that it's close to the sun. It's just that it is closing out a cycle. And that's really the way to look at it. It is closing out a cycle. And so as we close out a cycle, releasing the past cycle, you may feel fatigued is the wrong word. Well, if you're exerting, you will feel more fatigued. You may feel flat and depressed and energy, not quite as excitable, not quite as energetic. Some of this depends on where it is. Let me not make qualifications. We all know this is a general video. So permit yourself to, as you head towards the new moon, which for me is shortly after midnight, shortly after 1 a.m. on Monday morning, so Sunday night, Monday morning for me on the Pacific coast of the US. So then you've got to allow yourself to be depleted, allow yourself to restore. That's the first thing I would recommend. Allow yourself to restore, allow yourself to be depleted, allow yourself to release, allow yourself to do a little bit less, allow yourself to have less energy, and don't get thrown by any feelings of despair or depression unless you're dealing with a medical issue, in which case please see a medical professional. But it's not, before the new moon, the 72 hours before new moon, particularly the 48 hours before new moon, not unusual to feel kind of low. The other way to use the next couple of days before we get to the new moon itself is to start thinking about, ruminating on where the sign of Scorpio sits in your chart and what house it occupies, what that house stands for, and what you would like to create in that house. This is the first of the Scorpio-Taurus lunations that we're having in a couple of years that is clearly not an eclipse. With two caveats, I would say, energetically. First and foremost, the full moon that occurred 2 weeks ago, which was a full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus, was directly related to the new moon in Scorpio. They're related signs, they're opposing signs. It just so happens right now that the full moons are happening 2 weeks before a new moon. At some point, this will switch to the new moons happening 2 weeks before a full moon. So the eclipses in the eclipse cycle and the eclipse cycle that closed out on October the 28th, and indeed, the eclipse cycle that occurred from September, October 2021 to October the 28th of this year is related to this new moon. And the second thing I want to say about this new moon is that if it feels a little bit like the universe is passing on the baton to you to say, here, I'm letting you grab hold of the wheel of your car again. As I've said to you, I think of eclipses and eclipse seasons as when sort of God, a spirit, takes hold of the car or the vehicle. And it was quite an eclipse season. And at this point in time, we might be feeling like we're through the tunnel, so to speak. But it may also very much feel like with this new moon, the universe is like, I've made clear, I'm kind of done for now with this eclipse whirlpool cycle. and here, take the baton, and now it's up to you. You drive the car now. It's something is being passed on to us with regard to things that we need to do. Often when the eclipse is occurring, ancient astrologers would say it's time to hide out. It's time to not venture out. Now that's a little extreme. It's time to not, a way of saying things will happen and will occur that are out of your control. So it's best to kind of lay low during eclipse season. And quite frankly, that's what a lot of us in some ways have done just by observing what has been going on in the world. Now, with this new moon in Scorpio, we may feel like, all right, it's time for me to get moving. Part of the reason, of course, is that the personal planets are now direct. We're not being influenced by a retrograde cycle one way or the other or something along those lines. There is the issue of both Mars and Mercury still being awfully close to the sun, and Mars getting ready to be combust on November the 17th. So on the 17th, Mars and the sun will conjunct. That 17th date is really important in relevance to this new moon, my friends, because there are 2 or 3 things happening on the 17th that I want to point out to you. Give me one sec. Let me get this out of the way. I think we'll all be glad that I am. On the 17th, Mars trines Neptune, the sun trines Neptune, and sun and Mars conjunct. Today, on November the 11th, Mars opposes Uranus, and on the day of the new moon, on the 13th, the sun opposes Uranus. I'm going to go over this again because these are the most relevant transits when it comes to this particular new moon. Okay, but coming back to the new moon and the new moon energy, to summarize what we've said so far, allow yourself to release, be depleted. It's nice that we're having these 48 hours on the weekend insofar as anyone has the weekend. So allow yourself to restore, allow yourself to take it easy. You know, for those of us who have the means to do so, things like Netflix and chill or taking naps and all that kind of stuff, or allowing yourself to be restored is kind of the way to go. But then by the time we get to, and also, as I said, coming back to the last point I was making, ruminate on, think on, by all means, what it is that you want to build in the Scorpio part of the chart. Now, here's where we get into the heart of this new moon, in such a way that it supports Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. The new moon in Scorpio is conjunct Mars, opposing Uranus in Taurus, and trining Neptune in Pisces. That's really all we need to know about this new moon. The sun, the moon, and Mars are very close together. They trine Neptune in Pisces, and they oppose Uranus in Taurus. The only aspect that is not made by the moon that is being encoded is Mars trining Neptune. So all of that is encoded. So we've got the following players: the sun, the moon, Mars, Neptune, Uranus. The sequence I told you still holds. Today, Mars opposes Uranus. On the 13th, we have the new moon and the sun opposes Uranus. We have a full Uranus. On the 17th, Mars and the sun conjunct and they trine Neptune. And these transits are encoded in the next for the next 28 days until we get to the December 12th new moon in Sagittarius. And I would say that at no other time in the second half of this year have we had really, there's still a qualification to be made with this combust Mars and the fact that Mercury is still close to the sun. Excuse me. I just showered, so I'm sort of in post-shower mode. But till about December 10th, December 12th, till the new moon in Sagittarius, December 15th is when Mercury goes retrograde next. So if you want to create something, and if you want to plant seeds for the future, and if you want to move down this path that is right for you, that we've been talking about in the past few videos, this path that may have made itself clearish by the end of August, beginning of September, only by the middle of September to have gone through a kind of a reversal. And then with the middle of September, the Virgo new moon that was ruled and disposited by a stationary Mercury. So nothing was really happening till the middle of October. Then starting the middle of October, actually about a week before the middle of October, we got thrown into the eclipses. Now we're on the other side of the eclipses. And here we are with the Scorpio new moon, where the universe is like here. Venus is now direct. Mercury is now direct. Yes, fine, Mercury and the Sun are kind of combust Mars, but the Mercury-Sun conjunction has already happened. But in the second half of this year, this is our one window in which to start to line things up and take our own action to move in the direction that we want to go. And to check and see through those actions whether this direction that we think we've received or we'd like to go down. And this goes right back to the Venus retrograde time, July 23rd to September the 4th, when I asked the question, what is in your heart? What is it that you're trying to do? What is it that you're trying to build? It goes right to the heart of Jupiter and Taurus. What is ending? What 12, 13-year cycle is ending in the Taurus part of your chart? And what 12, 13-year cycle is beginning? Is Jupiter elevating you if you're doing the right kind of if you're manifesting the right way, if you're on the right path in the Taurus part of your chart, or is Jupiter ending something so that you can get on to the right path in the Taurus part of your chart? We just finished up the eclipses in the Taurus part of the chart. We've got Uranus in the Taurus part of the chart that is playing a key role in this new moon, and Uranus is retrograde, and my rules for retrograde apply to all of us. If you've got Uranus direct in your birth chart, it's the Uranus direct portion that will manifest Uranus's effects more clearly. If you have Uranus retrograde in your birth chart, it's the Uranus retrograde. But for people who have Uranus direct, Uranus retrograde is a time of integrating everything that was kind of brought forth. I'm being simplistic here in the interest of time, while Uranus was direct. And if you're a Uranus retrograde person, then, this is the time for Uranus to work its magic on you. But with Uranus, it is trying to make you more authentic. And some might say more rebellious, depending on how they perceive you, in the Taurus part of your chart. Independent, authentic, authentic, authentic. Your way of doing things, what is right for you, what is true for you in the Taurus part of your chart. It's an exciting planet. And when you have a new moon opposite Uranus, and a new moon conjunct Mars opposite Uranus, you have to ask two questions. With the new moon itself, you've got to ask, what action can I take in the Scorpio part of the chart, where we recently had eclipses of release, to finish the work of the eclipse cycle that had been running from September 2021 to October 28, 2023. The new moon in Scorpio may not strictly be an eclipse, but it is related to the eclipses completely, by virtue of the fact that the full moon lunar eclipse 2 weeks ago informs this new moon. This new moon is building on that new moon eclipse in Taurus we had 2 weeks ago. And in some ways, we might find that we feel much clearer about what it is that needs to be released in the Scorpio part of the chart to support the Taurus part of the chart, and to support the authentic way of doing things in the Taurus part of the chart. Authentic for us, right for us, individual to us. Not everyone's path and journey in a part of the chart is the same. Everyone's path and journey to manifest the right kind of home, to manifest the right kind of partner, if that is something you're interested in, to manifest the right kind of romance, to have or find children in your life, to do the right kind of work. It's amazing just how that right path is, and it's that question of finding the door that is meant for you, and how it just opens and pulls you in, as opposed to banging on other doors that will never open, and you're just bruising yourself trying to bang on them. And so what is that thing that is right for you? And it's not just a question of fate and what you're fated to pass through, but it is that question of what is your way? Where will you shine the most? Where will you be utilized in the way that is most to you? So Uranus is in Taurus. this authenticity is being manifested in the Taurus part of your chart. In the opposite house, the Scorpio part of the chart, what actions can be taken to support Uranus in Taurus? And what have we learned? What is the direction that the last eclipse cycle from September, October 2021 to October 20th, 2023 has set for us, that we can now take this baton back from the back from spirit, back from the universe, back from God, and say, all right, let me start to move in this direction, and let me see. Unlike end of August to middle of September, is this actually going to take root, or is this not? The secret to this, of course, is what I'm calling considered action. Mars is going to be conjuncting the sun 4 days after the new moon. And the sun and Mars are going to have a communication. Mars is going to burn off, just like the moon is right now burning off the last 28-day cycle by being so close to the sun. The sun is so powerful, it is cleansing the moon, if you want to think of it that way, through its sort of fieriness and its truth with a capital T. And on the other side of it, once the new moon occurs, the moon will start to become more visible, start to separate from the sun, and certainly 2 weeks from the new moon, it will be a full moon, much like right now we're about to have a full Uranus. The sun is going to oppose Uranus on the day of the new moon. So we may feel very aware and very committed to. We may feel very aware and very committed to this Uranian beginning, this not beginning, because Uranus has been doing its work, this Uranian agenda, this Uranian task force, this Uranian, let's just use the word agenda for now. It feels like it's more calculated with that word. I'm not crazy about that word. This Uranian intention in the Taurus part of our chart. We may feel very committed to it. We may feel very aligned to it. We may feel like we're really observing it, and we may feel like we really know what it is. And what is it that we're trying to continue to build in the Taurus part of the chart? The eclipses may have left, but we've still got Jupiter here. Jupiter goes direct December the 31st, and in the Taurus part of the chart till May. Uranus continues to hang out for a couple of years. So it's one of those moments where every year around this time, we're going to have a full Uranus right now. So we might feel very connected to that. Today, Mars opposed Uranus. Now, this is one of the things you may actually be feeling a little bit, and this is something to just be aware of, is Mars opposing Uranus is a notoriously independent, feisty, fiery, accident-prone transit. The fact that Mars is so close to the sun may well mean that a lot of the energy is internal. So not only before this new moon could you possibly be feeling naturally depleted because the moon is conjunct to the sun, you may also energetically be feeling a little bit depleted, but also internally processing what actually works for you and what does not work for you. You may have been feeling quite fiery, but not necessarily in a way that is outwardly expressed. The fieriness is going to be linked very much to, the fieriness is going to be energetically linked very much to what you feel is right for you, or your way of doing things, or knowing and understanding who you are and what will work for you and what will not work for you. The fieriness may also, as I said, be very much part of this ruminative energy with regard to what it is that you're going to try to do in the Scorpio part of the chart to support the Taurus part of the chart and the authenticity and the new beginnings and endings being created in the Taurus part of the chart, and to support and build on the eclipses that till very recently have been occurring in the Taurus part of your chart and the Scorpio part of your chart. Just because it's a South Node eclipse doesn't mean it isn't it isn't an eclipse. So Mars opposes Uranus today. You may be feeling both introvertedly ruminative about what to do in the Scorpio part of the chart, and you may also be feeling irked at anything that may have happened recently over the last week, week and a half, week or so, week and a half. That may have pushed your buttons a little, or you may have made you feel like, well, I think I'm going to go my own way on this. But here's the thing. Unlike a Mars-Uranus transit where Mars does not combust the sun, where you might be inclined to get in it with someone, or get into a fight, or get into an argument, or this time, the energy might be much more internal, much more contained. Much more, I'm going to bide my time, but I know where I want to go. I'm going to bide my time, but I know what is the right direction for me. I'm going to take considered action. Mars on its own, hunter-gatherer, going after your goals, going after your desires, taking action, feeding yourself, clothing yourself, sheltering yourself, pursuit of your ambitions, and the setting of boundaries. Conflict, the red planet, testosterone, competition, action. On its own, when it's acting independently, even reckless, accident-prone, injurious, rapacious, the planet of desire, and the planet of dealing with anyone who crosses that desire. Right now, burning off a certain amount of energy by being in conversation with the sun, in the sign of Scorpio, where something needs to be released, but a new set of actions can now be taken to build on that release to support the Taurus part of the chart. On the 17th, exactly conjunct the sun. After the 17th, starts to separate from the sun and gradually starts to become more visible. One of the questions we can ask, and this builds on the word ruminative and ruminating, is what would the sun in Scorpio, illuminating the Scorpio part of the chart, doing an internal review of all the cobwebs of everything that has been going on in the Scorpio part of the chart for the past few years, the eclipses of release. What would the sun instruct Mars to do? What would your innermost truthful, godlike self that is not consumed by the lunar or mercurial sides of our personality, our emotions and our intuition and our worry and our mental capacities, or indeed our egoic side of the personality, what would that internal part of us that is clear-sighted and that when given the reins can really guide us effectively, what would it say to Mars? What is the to-do list, the task list, the goal list, the agenda that the sun would give Mars related to the Scorpio part of the chart, in such a way that it supports and protects whatever is being trying to be built authentically in the Taurus part of our chart? Supports is clear, and it may be linked to whatever it is that we need to release in the Scorpio part of the chart. Protect may mean, and this is something we need to look out for, there may be actions or forces, and this goes back to the video I did a couple of videos ago related to the fact that we're in opposition season. We may be feeling like we have places we need to go and larger energetic forces that are trying to get us somewhere, but we may be feeling very under threat by more mundane forces around us. And I don't think that the threat is completely imagined. I think it wasn't intentional, but I think it makes sense. I'm so glad that I did the Saturn video after the opposition video, and we talked a little bit about what it means perhaps to be right and what it means to be effective. Now, you know, I'm going to qualify this in a little, not qualify, explain this. Being effective does not mean being manipulative to the point that your intentions are murky or not karmically clear. I think that I can certainly talk about this here as well, considering we're talking about the planet Mars. I think it's helpful. I think it's important. I think it's imperative to... What is the difference between love and desire? You know, very often we think we love someone when we might desire them or we might be in love with them. So long as they give us what we want and how we want it and when we want it, we love them and we exalt them and we think there's so much meaning behind it. We're almost Neptunian about our fantasist about the way we might feel about someone. But the moment they don't act in a way that we approve of, we then go into the, I didn't think this person was this, and this person has taken advantage of me, and this person is this, and I can't believe this, and we either blame that person or, that's not, desire has a hunger to it. So it helps when we are contemplating taking considered action. It helps us to get clear on what our intentions are, what we can control, what we feel is right for us. What is the most self-loving action that we can take? But self-loving does not mean spoiling ourselves. It doesn't mean... I kind of have this saying with myself, which is, and it's not from me. I think it's from sort of Shakti Gawaine's daily meditations book or something like that. This idea of feeding your inner child once a day so it doesn't sabotage your day. If you're craving that slice of chocolate cake, for God's sake, eat it, as long as it's not going to create a health problem for you. As long as you're not dealing with sugar issues or diabetes or something where it will impact you negatively. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to get things done and trying to be good and trying to be effective and avoid that chocolate, and it's going to mess with your day. So if your inner child wants to do something and it's relatively benign and it's relatively safe and it wants to listen to that pop song, it wants to take a break, it wants to take a nap, let it do it so that it is done and it is happy and it is satisfied. And we're often talking about the moon in that case. We're talking about nurture. We're talking about the importance of having a nurturing Monday morning and honoring the moon that rules that day. Just as what can you do to honor Mercury on Wednesdays, and Mars on Tuesdays, and Jupiter on Thursdays, and Venus on Fridays, and Saturn on Saturdays, and the Sun on Sundays. But when it comes to considered action, when it comes to the right type of action, when it comes to being effective, it is also important to deal with the distinction of, is it love or is it desire? Am I doing it for the love of doing something, which is a very different quality and feeling? What are my intentions? Do I want it this way? Am I hungry for contact with this person or with this being? Or do I feel a sense of ownership? Or do I feel a sense of possessiveness? Or do I feel a sense of, oh my God, I absolutely have to, this has to happen, Is it driven by a kind of hunger? Or does it make sense for me to take a step back and really determine, is this person married? Whatever we think about the married, is this person somebody else's? What is the right way to, what are the relationships that are involved? And what is the cleanest intention? Because it might be that the universe will support the cleanness of that intention. And it might be that in at least acknowledging the cleanness of the intention, that we're able to be effective because we're building a bridge, because we're at least acknowledging the cleanness of the intention. We're at least acknowledging the other parties involved. We're acknowledging the other factors involved. We're acknowledging, you can take this into a professional aspect. You really want a particular assignment. You really want a particular project. You really want a particular role in something. That kind of hunger for it, or I just love this thing. I just really want it. Really wanting something is a tricky space to be in. It can mess with our intentions. It can mess with considered action. It can mess with being effective, as opposed to even potentially being right about something. It can absolutely play a role in conflict. I'm right about this. This is wrong. Well, then what is, and communication plays such an important role in this. What is the most effective way to use our words and to use our tone to help create reality? Because ultimately it is language and syntax that creates reality for all of us. So with that particular meditation in mind, and a little bit out of the way, we can touch on this again, but it sort of goes back. As I said, at a time of oppositions and a time of feeling generally carrying a kind of threatened energy. And we, I don't think it's unusual for us to feel threatened when we have something or path that we are pursuing. If there's a flame that you're nurturing from here to, let's say, February 22nd, when Venus and Mars conjunct in Aquarius, then you kind of want to shield that flame. And there's an awareness that there might be forces that want to blow out that flame or may not want you to do something because their desire for how to utilize you in their life may keep you from moving down a path that is authentic to you and all that kind of stuff. But with these oppositions, as I said, and with the Saturnian principle, even though we're talking about it in the sign of Pisces where it's transiting, but worth it carrying on that principle to this video when we're talking about considered action. The action we're talking about with Mars in Scorpio, with the sun and the moon, with the sun having a conversation with the moon on the 13th and with Mars on the 17th, and directing the moon over the next 28 days to take a certain amount of action and give it a certain amount of energy, and having that communication with Mars. There's something very it's time to take the reins back from the universe. It's time to start to move towards wherever it is that we want to move towards, to start the process of releasing what we want to release in the Scorpio part of the chart, but also to build what we want to build in the Scorpio part of the chart. Remember, it is a new moon in Scorpio. It is not an eclipse of release. The release will happen through the building, and the building will happen through the release. It is a new moon that is still very much in conversation with the eclipses. But when you have a new moon, there's a set of tasks and activities and goals that are related to that part of the chart. A new moon solar eclipse is a new moon and a solar eclipse. So even if you have a solar eclipse of release, like we did a month ago in the sign of Libra, it's still a new moon. So for 28 days, there's still actions that need to be taken of a more mundane kind in the Libra part of the chart. But it's a new moon solar eclipse, so we have a solar eclipse of release, which then also on a more macro level carries us to March 24th of next year, where something bigger, so to speak, has to be released in the Libra part of the chart. But that doesn't mean that the new moon in Libra is not taking some sort of actions to build and achieve certain goals and aims and intentions in the new moon part of the chart. Something that a lot of us do with new moons is set intentions. So let's bring it back to that. What intentions do you want to set in the Scorpio part of the chart that feel right to you? And that build on the eclipse cycle that we are just ending in the right way. And by the 17th, we might get clear about a couple of things. We might get clear about what is opposing us and what is perhaps an impediment to whatever it is that we're trying to build in the Taurus part of our chart authentically, and what we need to protect ourselves from, whether it is real or not real and how significant a threat it is. And we might get clear about what it is that we really, as I said, this path forward that may be linked to what was clear to us and how we wanted to move forward by the end of August is not yet a clear path. It's not a path we're galloping down. We're not galloping down it because Mars is not away from the sun. It's not a full Mars. It's not opposing the sun. It's not a quarter Mars. It's considered. And by the 17th, the agenda will be even clearer. What do I need to build in the Scorpio part of the chart? And how do I do it step by step by step? And because this new moon is coming on the heels of the Mars opposing Uranus, if I'm feeling pretty clear about what it is that's going to work for me and what is not, and I resolve to, as I said, this Mars opposite Uranus may be may be less volatile than many, although you might be feeling an internal volatility, an internal call to authenticity, an internal review of the things that have irked you recently, an internal weighing up of who and what is for me and who and what is not, right, wrong, and different because of the way I am wired, very Uranian. Who am I really? What is right for me? No matter how much I try to bend myself like a pretzel, and no matter how right this other party may be, we're just not a good fit because I know who I am. I know what works for me. I know what gets on my nerves, and I can continue to work on it, but I know who I am, and I know how I'm wired. That doesn't mean that I have to give in to my negative impulses, but it does mean that I know what, especially if it's a contracted relationship or it's a marriage or it's a partner, I just know what's going to work and what's not going to work. What's going to be easier, what's going to be more authentic, and what's not. So, added to all of this, the other part of this communication has got to be, how is this new moon supporting Neptune in Pisces? Now, this is a more complicated transit. If we're considering something artistic or Neptunian, where we're relying on the muses or inspiration or imagination or fantasy, we're writing something, we're creating something. It's not fact, it's imagination. It's talking to this other realm from where inspiration comes. It's starting to perform or write or create something and then feeling the flow of imagination, the inspiration, catching it right out of the air in that moment. It can be highly spiritual, renouncing something. Not being appropriately boundaried is another challenge. And we're talking about Mars. There may be an invitation to take considered action, either in the pursuit of artistic, imaginative, or spiritual or renunciatory goals. And by that, I will include things like meditation, not having such a strong grip on 3D reality for some reason, release, renunciation, spirituality, monasteries traditionally, even hospitals and prisons, the idea of being in a space where you give yourself a timeout to consider, to reflect, to ponder on the real nature of things as opposed to the 3D nature of things. There may also be this may indeed be a time Saturn and Neptune and Pisces have also gone through, with the planets sort of going through Virgo recently and opposing both those planets, going through Scorpio now and trining them. Mercury is already in Sag, and as the planets move into Sag, they're going to square these planets. And a lot of the lunations recently have been, as we've noted, new moons especially, have been in conversation with, because they're happening in sort of the 20 to 25 degree, 26 degree portion that's where they've been happening, the new moons recently. They've been in conversation with Uranus and Neptune a lot. And because the full moons are happening in the first 5 or 6 degrees, they've been, some of them have been in conversation with Saturn, which is in the first 5 degrees of Pisces, a fair amount. But it's the conversation with the Uranus and the Neptune parts of the chart that has been so clear and so pronounced. We had a new moon in Virgo in the middle of September that was trine Uranus and opposed Neptune. Not that long ago, because it exercised its influence right up to the eclipse on October 14th. A feeling of something not quite being right. Again, a full Neptune as we headed towards that that September 14th new moon. The Sun opposing Neptune shortly after. So with the trine to Neptune, another thing to ruminate on and ponder, and it may be happening because things will come up with this trine, is you know that saying, and I don't know how, which is kind of release people who are sort of playing and messing with your head. Neptune is so anti-Saturn and anti-Mercury, and it's so anti-sense and logic and information and data. And it is so intuitive and so murky. It takes, I mean, Uranus is intuitive, but it is intuitive, I feel, in a way that's actually helpful because it is a quantum leap in understanding. It's still something you can grasp. It's still something that you can utilize. In Neptune's case, you just don't know what is real and what is it. I mean, it is truly the ultimate, it's the master gaslighter. And so you might be coming up to a period where you are really looking at making some decisions around what you're just going to release and continue to renounce. And you may be doing that because you may have an awareness that it is somehow working to your benefit to do so. Or you might actually be thinking, is it time to set up some boundaries? And again, if you do think that, and I think you might, at least consider it, then the question to ask is going to be, what considered action? So, in some ways, this new moon conjunct Mars is really, it's probably one of my favorite lunation. It's probably my favorite lunation of the second half of this year. Now, it is opposing Uranus. So, we do still look out for southern things, but that's not necessarily unexciting to me. But that says a lot about my personality too. Other people may find it not quite so exciting. There's something really nice about getting internally clear in a quiet way about resolving, and that was the word that was used for the October 28th eclipse, to resolve, to go somewhere, to resolve, to understand, to contemplate what the purpose of this eclipse cycle has been. What are we building in the Aries and the Taurus parts of our chart, where the North Node has been transiting, where the eclipses of leaning in have been happening? What do we instinctively feel we need to release in the Scorpio and the Libra part of the chart? But releasing something, it's rare to release something in a part of the chart, not replace it with something else. So is the new moon in Scorpio, in fact, around building the new scorpionic energy on the heels of releasing whatever needs to be released to support Uranus and Taurus and Jupiter and Taurus? Could very well be. As I've said to you before, for me, a season, people talk about Scorpio season and Taurus season and Virgo season, Libra season. A season really gets going once the new moon occurs. Prior to the new moon, the personal planets, in this case Mercury and Mars, are doing their sweep, are doing their communicating, are doing their... and when the sun comes into the part of the chart, the review process starts. And then the new moon occurs. And the new moon is what... And you can do this experiment. I can have every intention to take action in this case, the Scorpio part of the chart. But something or the other will keep coming up, and it'll be the new moon. I may even want to do, it'll be that the new moon occurs, and we're like, all right, now I can actually do it. It's a source of constant amusement for me. So the new moon occurs, and we get to December the 12th, when the next new moon occurs in Sagittarius. But on the heels of this new moon and this cycle, in the beginning of December, to be exact, on December 4th, till the end of the year, till December 29th, Venus comes into Scorpio. So whatever actions that you're taking, you might see results of that action, those actions, and the options start to appear in December 4th to 29th. So we're hitting the 45-minute mark. I'm not feeling pressured in any way, but I want to bring this home. in a quiet, contemplative way, determine what actions you want to take in the Scorpio part of the chart to support Uranus in Taurus and also Jupiter in Taurus. How you want to either capitalize on Neptune in Pisces in the Pisces part of the chart, or set up proper boundaries and protect yourself. It is likely that the actions that you're considering you may keep under the surface or under the radar or in a kind of protective. It is considered action. It is unlikely to be rash. It is unlikely to be reckless, which is a good thing. It may be a little bit slower. You may not have all of Mars's energy to harness or lean into. It may be that you're not doing 5 things in a day. It may be that you're doing just that one, but that one may be really considered. By the time you hit the 17th, things may become even clearer with regard to how you need to protect yourself or capitalize on something related to that Neptune transit in Pisces. It may become even clearer what it is that you're meant to pursue in the Scorpio part of the chart as the Sun and Mars conjunct and they trine Neptune. The oppositions to Uranus are already underway. Mars opposed Uranus today. The Sun and the new moon will oppose Uranus on the day of the new moon itself on the 13th. All eyes on the Scorpio part of the chart to see how it can support our lives, but also keep an eye out for what is going on in the Scorpio part of the chart that can act as a threat or an impediment to where it is that you want to go and what you want to build in the Taurus and the Aries part of the chart. The Taurus and the Aries part of the chart will win out, but the more sheltered the flame is, the more appropriately nurtured, the more considered the action, the more quiet the action. And it may be that you kind of have to be a little bit Seven of Swordsy for the people. Now, I'm not suggesting theft and deception for anyone. It may be that, as I said, considered action is not yang or reckless or out in the world for people. It may be step by step, by step, by step, and constantly checking to see, is there alignment? Is there alignment? Is there alignment? And some of the alignment may not show up till December, until Venus, the planet of alignment and manifesting on a day-to-day basis, shows up in Scorpio. And Venus is going to have her own journey. The next video I'm going to do will be on Venus's transit in Libra, because when it comes to that last week of November, indeed starting about November the 20th, Venus is going to take on some importance. She is going to oppose Chiron in Aries. She's going to conjunct the South Node in Libra. So by the time Venus enters Scorpio, she'll be very informed with regard to what needs to be released and how to continue some of the themes that these planets recently have been making as they went through quote-unquote Libra season. But Scorpio season for us continues till the end of this year. But we capitalize on whatever actions we start to take in December. Until about December 10th or 12th, it is a time for action, as considered as it might be. And make sure that your intentions are clear, they're appropriately self-loving, that you're making this a distinction, since Mars is involved, between desire and love, wanting, grasping, selfishly satisfying yourself, as opposed to really doing something for the love of, which is a bigger energy. Or even choosing to love yourself. Wanting something and desiring something is actually not really the most self-loving thing that we can do. It's an energy that in and of itself sort of subjugates us to something, that compromises, that it's like an addiction. There's an unhealthy codependency. We give up our autonomy. We give up our independence. We give up our sense of self-worth when we hanker after something or someone. Right intentions, considered action, let the Sun in Scorpio inform the Moon, inform Mars, Keep an eye, because we're going to have a full Uranus in a couple of times, we already do, around what you feel is the right path for you in the Taurus part of your chart. And whatever actions you're going to commit to take, my dears, in the Scorpio part of the chart, that is who you are serving. Whether by protecting yourself from threats and aggression and other people's considered or covert actions in the Scorpio part of the chart, which is possible, but also, and most importantly, by taking the kind of actions that you may have been waiting. You may have been, talking about galloping, you may have, part of the challenge of running into something in, thinking you were going down a certain path till the end of August only to run into a set of obstacles by the middle of September might have been that you were galloping. And now is the time for a walk. At most, a slow trot. But that one thing every day, that one thing every day, that one thing every day in the Scorpio part of the chart to serve the Taurus part of your chart. And the one thing every day, the one thing every day, the one thing every day to harness this Neptunian, this trine to Neptune in the Pisces part of the chart. As I said, worth it to tap into the energy of being inspired in the Pisces part of the chart. A lot depends on where Pisces sits in your chart. To determine what you want to release in the Pisces part of the charts in a way that, because the things that you might just be like, you know what, I'm letting go of this. But also there might be a commitment on your part to kind of protect yourself from those kinds of deceptive or gaslighty forces that have been operating in the Pisces part of the chart. How great that we did that video on Saturn in Pisces just last. Knowing what Saturn is trying to get us to do in Pisces is going to be a big help, actually, as it goes direct, as it's just gone direct. The rulers of this new moon in Scorpio are Mars and Pluto. Mars is in Scorpio. Great. So Mars ends up being one of the dispositors. So the idea of considered action, Mars being a very important planet to this new moon, is fair and true. Pluto is in Capricorn. Remember that till the end of this year, we're trying to cooperate with Pluto and complete the transformation of the Capricorn part of the chart that it is trying to complete, that it has been putting in motion since 2008. We're going to have another opportunity to do this in the latter half of next year. And you can search the Pluto and Capricorn transit videos in my list of videos, and you'll see what I mean by that. As far as dispositing is concerned, Pluto and Capricorn disposited by Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces. So along with Mars and Scorpio, Neptune in Pisces is the other dispositor of this chart. Amazing. The new moon conjuncts Mars and trines Neptune. Jupiter is in Taurus, ruled by Venus. Venus is in Libra. Venus is in her own house. That makes Venus the third dispositor of this chart. And we're going to talk about Venus in Libra tomorrow. Look to Venus in Libra and the transit of Venus in Libra to provide solutions and opportunities that will help you manifest what you're trying to manifest in the Scorpio part of the chart. And watch out for that Neptune and Pisces. And if you're feeling like somewhere boundaries need to be set, but in a considered, setting boundaries recklessly or in a hot-tempered way, in a very Mars reckless way when Mars is not that close to the sun, can be effective but doesn't have to be. You may have the opportunity with this new moon to set boundaries in a way that is much more considered and much more, might have teeth, you might be calmer, more considered. As I said, one action a day in the Scorpio part of the chart or related to the Scorpio part of the chart to support the Taurus part of your chart and to, if necessary, set appropriate boundaries related to the Pisces part of the chart. Have a happy new moon in Scorpio, a happy Diwali to everyone who celebrates. Diwali is typically the dark of the new moon before the new moon occurs. So it'll be tomorrow, it'll be Sunday around this time. And that's why we illuminate what the moon cannot illuminate. This would be a good new moon just to do some intention work around. Some people like to set intentions once they can see the first crescent, the slightest crescent, because they believe the moon has some power. Some people like to do it right after a new moon. I tend to feel the new moon's energy after a new moon. Be prepared for Sunday to feel depleting, to have a limited amount of energy. Release, ruminate, continue to consider. The new moon for some people is going to be on a Monday. Not for everybody. If it is on a Monday, nurture yourself appropriately, especially in the mornings. Monday mornings can be hard going. Feed that inner child on a Monday morning, as long as you're doing it in a healthy way and not damaging yourself. And then intend and start to take those actions we talked about. All right, happy new moon. If you found this video useful, feel free to tell your friends about it, share, comment, like the video. If you're inclined to do that, it'll give the video more circulation on YouTube. Click on the subscribe button if you want to subscribe to my channel, and click on the bell icon, the wiggly bell on top of the bell icon, so that you're notified when I do new videos. If you're interested in reading, use my email address in the description box to inquire about rates, and I will leave it at that. And my next video will talk about Venus's transit through Libra. Thank you.